This lecture is being brought to you in part by the generous gifts of these sponsors.
Thank you, folks, and to Ken, thank you for that gracious introduction. So gracious that for a moment there I thought they'd gotten another speaker instead of me, but thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here. Pensacola is not home to me, but it's like a second home because one of my best friends for many decades, Quint Studer, and I have been involved in business together. I've worked with both his predecessor group and this group. So I've been here long enough, over enough decades, to have seen the stunning transformation of your city. It really is impressive. It always has been to me. And you got to, when Ken Ford asked you to speak, the answer is always yes, 100%. You know, I know you know this, but truly one of the most brilliant men in America. We were exchanging stories. Fishermen would call it lies, but we were just telling stories. And who else do you know that could say, when I was chairman of the board of NASA? I think I missed that invitation for me to become that chairman of that board. But it's an honor to be here, and I hope in some way it will be of help to you. Because I think the only reason to ever give a talk, speak to people, write a book, write an article, is to try to help people. And so that's the spirit in which I come. I've been, as you heard, at the forefront for a number of different crises, some of the most prominent crises in our lifetimes at least, and ended up writing a book. I'm not here to sell you books, but the title is Leadership is Worthless, but Leading is Priceless. And that somewhat contrarian concept and idea is one I feel very strongly about. And the reason is this, and that is leadership is worthless. There are over 50,000 books on Amazon alone with leadership in the title. If I ask you, have you read them? You say, yes, I have. What'd you read? But if I said, what did it say? I often get a blank look. And the reason that struck me, and the reason this contrarian idea, is that leadership is just a noun. It's just what you say. And anybody can say anything. And they often do, at length. At boring length. Trust me, I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt. But leading is priceless because it's what you do all day, every single person. So when I talk to audiences of 1,000 CEOs, I tell them what I tell you, which is a single mother is every bit as much a leader as any one of those people sitting in those seats. And it's true because we all lead the part of our lives that we're responsible for, and that's a verb. It's what you do in the active voice. It's not a passive voice. There is no passive form of leading in my view. And you see the cartoon here, the old fella standing on the edge of his of the 2x6, and yet somehow the old wizened fella outweighs this Roman legionnaire. And the old fella, as you may know, is Archimedes, and he's famous because for a lot of different things, but one of the most important things he ever said was, give me a lever long enough and I can move the world. So what I'm going to share with you in the course of the time that we have is some of the levers that I've found in contrarian wisdom about why leadership is worthless, but leading is priceless. And as it happens, some of you may know, Archimedes was killed by a Roman legionnaire. So I did not devise this cartoon, but whoever did knew what they were doing and had a sense of history. That, inconceivably, is my beautiful and brilliant wife, Maureen. I know what you're thinking. What was she thinking? She married me. I met Maureen when she was a newborn ICU flight nurse. The baddest of the bad when it comes to nurses in the emergency department, and even including emergency department nurses with whom I work. When we met, I took her to the top of, we trained at University of Utah, not because we're Mormon, as you may have noticed as we're drinking the wine out there. No offense to anyone, but because we love to ski. So I took her to the top of a ski run at Alta, Utah, called Gunsight. and it's called gun sight. You have to climb about 700 feet above the lifts because God put two big rocks, 30 feet tall, just like that. And that run is called gun sight. She said yes. I think she said yes because she'd never been down that run and she had no idea how to get down. But she did say yes. But she also said, I will marry you, but you have to re-recruit me through the course of our marriage. I had no clue what she was talking about. Zero. But if she's going to marry me, I'll figure this re-recruitment thing out. And I have for 46 years. But I would say one of the contrarian things I've learned about leading in times of crisis is re-recruitment. The importance of re-recruiting your A-team members and letting them know how much they mean and what they did. And that's not done in a job review every 6 months or every year. It's every day. And the same is true with your kids. You catch your kids doing something right, compliment them. Hey, that was great. I saw what you did there, That kid wanted to fight, but you wouldn't fight him. That was just great. Or if it's your employee, letting them know, I saw that. Listen, in a team meeting, could you talk about what you did and how well you did it? That's re-recruitment of the A-team. And we all know who the A-team members are, the people you go to work, wherever you are, you see them and you think, bring it on. That group of people is going to make it happen. Unfortunately, sometimes there's the B-team members. When you see them, you think, shoot me. Just shoot me. Give me two guns, in case this one jams. And with the B-team members, we have to re-recruit them back to the A-team so that they understand what went wrong, how it went wrong, and how it could go right. And a lot of times I match my B-team members up with my A-team so the B-team members can see what the A-team behaviors are, about how smoothly it goes when they're working. And then sometimes we have C-team members, and a lot of times those are just people that took the wrong job. They thought it was the right job. Now, when I toured through today, one of the most impressive things to me about this organization is the passion that burns in everybody in all of the buildings and the incredible resource that you have here and what it does for humanity. And I mean that quite literally. Now, you're wondering what the Louisville Slugger is all about. Maureen is now an indie film producer, and she produced a film called Druid Peak. And that's a fictional film, it's not a documentary, about the wolf reintroduction program in Yellowstone National Park. Won awards literally all over the world, one of which was the Louisville International Film Festival. Yes, there is one. Coming to Pensacola next year, maybe. Who knows? You could have a Pensacola Film Festival. And the reward for that is not just the accolades and the laurels, but as you can see, a full-sized ash Louisville Slugger bat. And we also got to tour the bat factory and take batting practice. I got to take batting practice, which as a former high school baseball player was really cool. Well, what's my point? When I fly home tomorrow and I walk in the door and Maureen's holding that bat, I'm in full re-recruitment mode. I know what's expected of me as soon as I come in. Now, the next slide is going to make you all laugh and hard. You're going to laugh harder than anybody. Snot out the nose, lean over your chair. Because that is what an all-American linebacker looked like back when the Earth's crust was cooling. Hard to believe. And the weird thing is, I weigh exactly the same in that picture as I do now. But like world hunger, I have a little bit of a redistribution problem. I'm working on that as much as I can. So you're going to hear some football stories, some football analogies. I was a linebacker, which probably not surprising given my demeanor and the way I looked there. Job description, linebacker, keep me honest here. Blow things up. Destroy the hopes and dreams of 11 guys who are foolish enough to step on the field with us, right? You were a D lineman, but same deal. And yet I was also a theology major. That's some kind of demonic combination right there, isn't it? Job description, synthesize, pull things together, help people develop meaning out of cacophony chaos. And both of those helped me a tremendous amount in both being an emergency physician, but also to the extent that I am, being a leader as well. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We've all been there, so Shakespeare almost never wrong as far as I can tell. And as you see in Henry IV, Part 2, that's Jeremy Irons, the actor, uneasy lies the head that wears the crown. And it does, but the only thing more uneasy than wearing the crown of the leader is not wearing the crown and not being the leader, not doing what needs to be done for the benefit of yourself, but more importantly for the people with whom we work, with whom we live, our families, in particular our kids, and our parents as they age as well. So I'm going to tell you 3 things about leading in times of crisis and then 3 more. Number 1, don't aspire to lead. You're already leading. You have to understand the leader you're looking for is you. The answers are not above us, they're within and among us. And if I were talking, as I often do, to a class of high school kids, I'd tell them the same thing. That you're already leading your life and the aspects of your life. Number 2 is embrace the fact that you're a leader and act positively about that each day. And then finally, inspire others to lead as well. Because even the best of the A-team members have down days, have times when they need to feel better about what it is that they do and how they can do it. And then 3 more. I want you to think about leading and leadership in a radically different way. That you're all already leaders, and so are your kids, and so is every other member of your family or the social group with whom you interact. Number 2, to act on those things within a week. Because if you don't act on what you hear within a week, you're probably not going to do it at all. Not because you're bad people, but because you're people. That's a normal interaction. So act on something that you hear every time you hear something that you think might be positive. And then finally, to innovate yourself and your team. And your team could be your family, it could be your marriage, it can be your team, your organization, it can be an entire company that you may be responsible for leading all or part of. And innovation does not occur at the speed of intelligence, genius, or creativity. Innovation occurs at the speed of trust. Because if people don't trust each other, they're not going to step outside the lines. This went over real well when we had dinner at Mar-a-Lago with Elon Musk. But that's another story. My point is, if you create trust within your family, your organization, your team, whatever that team is defined, then your possibilities are limitless. And we're going to give you several different examples of that. Samuel Beckett, the playwright, was quite good at this. He said, ever tried, ever failed? No matter. Try again. Fail again. Fail better. And making failure your fuel is a critical thing that all of us need to recognize. We shouldn't punish ourselves when we go see failure. We should embrace the fact that the failure occurred, that we had the courage to step outside the lines to be able to try something new that maybe didn't work or didn't completely work. If you've never heard Abby Wambach, she and I have spoken at several meetings together, but her commencement speech at Barnard College is 28 minutes and 34 seconds of pure joy. And one of the things she talks about is making failure your fuel. You played in the league, you break down film. And yeah, you see what goes right, but you spend as much or more time talking about what went wrong and why. And it doesn't have to be accusatory. It's simply recognizing that there will be failure. So innovation is not for everyone. I don't know if you got cats, but the guy says to his cat, never, ever think outside the box. So I'll make a distinction for you. That's my distinction. I can't point you to a book other than one I wrote that says this, but the boss, usually all in capitals, is somebody who's quite convinced that he's the most important person in the room and the most important person in every room in which he steps. But the leader is someone who knows that it's her job to make everyone else in the room feel that they're the most important person in the room. So particularly when I talk to young folks, don't be the boss. Be the leader. You don't want to be the boss. And I would say to you gently that most of the times in organizations I've been involved with, when the boss says, think outside the box, they don't mean it. They mean think inside my box. Think the way I think. parrot back to me what you have heard me say in the past. It's no way to run an organization. It's no way to run a family. It's no way to have a relationship. Contrarian, perhaps, but it's served me well. So this is why I say the leader you're looking for is you. Look in the mirror. And what I mean by that is someday. Someday is a wistful, worthless word. Someday something's going to happen. Instead, I prefer the emphatic with an exclamation point, today. Today I'm a leader. How will I lead? Am I a leader? That's not a question. I am a leader. The question is, how will I lead? How will the family lead together? The team lead together as you move forward? Because that's what I mean when I said the answers are not above us, they're within and among us, if we can only understand that. Now, there's a corollary. And the corollary is many of us have enjoyed from time to time the luxury of a victim's mentality. You know, I would have done it right, but the boss wouldn't let me. Or I would have done this, but mom or dad or whatever, fill in the blanks on all those things. And if you're serious about the leader you're looking for is you, then the victim mentality goes completely away. Because it's not someone controlling your life, it's you controlling your life. And if you read Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, a guy, in a concentration camp says, this is the most liberated I've ever been in a concentration camp. And his insight, as you may recall, is because he said, I realized that I can never control the circumstances which happen to me in my life, but I can always control how I feel about it. And so they're all similar insights, I think, if you will. I think it's demeaning, demoralizing, disfiguring, demonic, and satanic. My wife says satanic shouldn't be on there, but I think it should. To call someone a future leader. You're a future leader. You're not where I am. You're not at the heights that I am. And emerging leader, I'm all good with that. Developing leader, I hope I am. But the idea of calling someone a future leader, to me, is sad, quite frankly. Now, one thing I always do, and I did with Ken and his team, is make sure I talk to the people planning the speech before I give it, so I have some sense of what I'm talking about in the audience and all that. One exception occurred, and I think that meant somebody canceled at the last minute and they asked me to show up. So I did. 1,000 people in the audience, Klieg lights on, and I throw this slide up. And total silence. Right about that time, the Klieg lights came down a little bit, and I saw the banner in the back of the room, which said, you cannot make this up, Future Leaders Conference. And I had to make sure there was a door so I could go right out. But you take my point. There's an arrogance to calling someone a future leader instead of saying, hey, we're all in this together. We're all leading our part of this venture, whatever that venture is. Those are our three boys. Know what you're thinking? Thank the Lord they favored their mother. And they do, in more ways than one. The reason I put that up there is when they were younger, and I was in town because I've always had to travel a lot in my jobs, I'd drive them to school. And when they got out of school every day, when they got out of my truck and went into the school, I said precisely the same thing to them, which is one more step in the journey of discovering where your deep joy intersects the world's deep needs. I swear I said this to them. They prefer to take the bus, as you might guess, But my point is, you have to start with your deep joy, not the world's deep needs. How many people have taken jobs that weren't their jobs to do? That's the C-team members. And it wasn't theirs to embrace in the first place. Now, that's a journey of discovering and rediscovering, particularly over the arc of the time of your life, what your deep joy is and how it changes over time and how important that can be. So we'll come back to that in numerous times as regards deep joy. I've been asked, honored, privileged to step up in times of crisis pretty much my whole life, not just when I was a linebacker destroying the hopes and dreams of 11 guys on the other side of the field. Not that this is sticking with me, but I do have dreams from time to time about this. So at any rate, how did I become, people say all the time, hey doc, how do I build my resume to get a job like yours as the medical director of the NFL Players Association? I got the job on August 1st, 2001, when Corey Stringer, a tackle for the Vikings, died of heat stroke. And inevitably somebody says, it's a pretty rough picture to put up there of Corey. I do it not with the permission, I do it at the insistence of Kelsey Stringer, his widow, and his children, who want Corey to be remembered. And the phone rang, and Gene Upshaw was on the other end of the line. Gene was arguably the best left guard in NFL history, Oakland Raiders Hall of Famer, executive director at that time of the NFL Players Association, and my best friend. So Gene didn't go to ChatGPT to look for resumes. He called me instantly because he trusted me. He trusted me because we were best friends. His youngest and my youngest were very, very close and still are close. So my point is, don't build resumes, build relationships that will take you so much further in terms of intersecting deep joy with deep needs to begin with. I was at the Pentagon on 9/11. It was as if it was a movie set. I can tell you that everybody who came in, whether they flew in as I did or drove in on their fire trucks or their ambulances, it looked like a movie scene, particularly at the Pentagon. And so lessons occur as a part of that. And so what I've tried to do in this talk and the other work that I've done is describe what did you learn from those things. So let's talk about some of those things. I also had the chance to, I led a mobile recovery team emergency team to Ukraine right after the war broke out. We spent a month there. Mobile means we saddle up in the morning and go to the sound of the guns, and whatever we found is what we took care of. And I came back, and the reporters somehow got tipped off that I was coming back, and they're there with their cameras and their microphones. Dr. Mayer, you're a hero. You went voluntarily into the maw of battle. And my answer now is I'm no hero. I am no hero. But let me tell you about the 350 heroes that we had the honor and privilege of taking care of, the Ukrainian citizens that we cared for and the honor and privilege. Their bravery, their courage, their tenacity is what stands out. And I would say, think about who else do you know that has shown that level of bravery, courage, and tenacity. And we'll circle back to that. 2 weeks into the deployment, we stayed in a dorm overnight when we were there. And 6 o'clock in the morning, 3 Su-27 flanker Ukrainian jets went by at window level on my second floor dorm. Supersonic, it shattered all the windows in my room. Quickly followed by 4 Russian rockets, which impacted about 3 blocks away. And I snapped that picture when I was running towards the site to try to figure out who's there and help him. It turns out that was a train station that we had been at 2 days prior that got hit by the rockets. But when I came back, Pam Brown with CNN asked me in an interview, I don't know how she got that picture, but she said, what did you think when you were running towards that oily smoke boiling off the horizon? And my answer was, I'm in the right place. I mean, I didn't go over there to be a tourist. I went over there to help people. And my question is not, hey, wasn't that something to go run to the sounds of battle? My question is, are you in the right place? Are you in the right place? And I would submit to you, if you're following your deep joy in order to help others and lead from the front lines, then you're in the right place, no matter what that place is. And it's different, I'm sure, for everybody in the room.
Zilch left, 35 Wichita Macho Toe on 1 right. Dice right, F fly, Whiskey Brady. Dice right numbers, 3 Jet Spielberg on 1 right. Tray right closer, Karate, Can, 12 Duo, Alert Booty on 1 right. Brizzle left tight, F fly, pass 37 punch, waggle, help, baby dizzy, X fan on the turbo. On the turbo. Football, man. Football.
So it's funny, but and you're excluded from this. I'll give you $1,000 if you can tell me what that meant. I mean, no, but in your businesses, in this building and the buildings here, there's a taxonomy, a way of talking that makes perfect sense to a scientist. If I say to one of my colleagues, my emergency physician colleague, and I say, Mrs. Smith in room 6 has a ventricular tachydysrhythmia with unstable vital signs or hemodynamics, she's got a very clear idea. I mean, you can see the gestalt of what that looks like. And my point is, that's true in football as well. Now, if you didn't happen to play for the Bengals, you wouldn't know what he was talking about. So keep me honest here. When Aaron Rodgers goes to the Steelers, people say he's got to learn the offense. It's like, he's been doing it 20 years. I mean, is he a slow learner or what? No, the lingo, both on the defensive and offensive side of the ball, are different. Club to club, offensive coordinator to offensive coordinator. And a lot of times we just have to learn that. I see many of you are veterans, and if you served on a ship or you served wherever you served, there's a lingo there too. I learned that when I was on aircraft carriers. Planning makes all the difference in the world. We don't usually use players' names ever, but everyone remembers this and where they were. It's almost, the graphic detail. And people say, wow, he was resuscitated within a minute and 46 seconds at the time that he went down, very close to the Bengals logo there. And he was attended to by 3 emergency physicians, resuscitologists from the University of Cincinnati, good friends of mine, who ran out on the field and were in charge of the resuscitation. And people say, wow, wasn't that lucky? Wasn't that fortunate? Luck had nothing to do with it. That every club, we call them clubs instead of teams, are required to have an emergency action plan ahead of time. They've got to practice twice in the year, running 5 resuscitation scenarios, including traumatic head injury, and in this case, something called commotio cordis, where the rhythm of the heart is disturbed. And so my point is, leading in times of crisis requires preparation, requires the right people in the right places, with the right ability to coordinate together so that everyone knows what they're doing. And again, not to keep hammering on the buildings I was in today here at IHMC, but that's clear that preparation is there, the ideas of what we do if things go wrong. Is that you? Going into work or going home? I mean, it's a legitimate question. I mean, that happens to be an emergency physician, of course. But my point is, if you're successful at leading, I think your job is to liberate that jump in everybody in your family, your organization, your team, whatever the job is. Certainly in emergency medicine, I feel like all of us should be able to jump for joy, not just going into work and going home to work, but that ability for people to feel liberated to, as I say, reverse the jump is an important one. And I always say the same things, and I'll come back to it, but what would have to be true for people to feel that way, regardless of what your job is? Because you would best be the author of what changes need to occur to make it a better place to work, a better family in which to interact, better parents, better children, all that kind of stuff.
Das hier ist mein Sektor. Das hier ist das wichtigste Gerät des Küstenwächters. Das Gerät und das Gerät. Überlebensradar.
Mayday, Mayday. Hello, can you hear us? Can you hear us? Can you... Over. We are sinking. We are sinking.
Hello? This is the German Coast Guard.
We are sinking. We're sinking.
What are you thinking about?
I love that one. Pensacola, it's a nautical theme there, in terms of what are you thinking about? But my point is not just the language and how appropriate it is, Berlet's language that we're talking about. But, if we're serious about leading, what are we leading about? What guides us and helps us understand what is good leading, what's great leading, and how we can make failure our fuel as well. A lot of this is hiring right, making sure that, you don't hire your family, but you hire the family in the way you interact with them in a certain way. And at work, certainly, we hire our teams. First of all, does that guy look like an incarcerate to you? It's like, where do you get that sweatshirt? Who thought that was a good idea, you know? But I respect Bill because his concept that talent sets the floor of a team, but character sets the ceiling of a team. So that's what I mean by hire right, hire for passion, hire for character, hire for people who are going to burn the organization up, not down, with the passion that they have for what it is that they do. And here's some general thoughts about that. See if it works. Number one, hire right, because if you don't hire right, you're going to repent for a very long time. So the most expensive decision you end up making in an organization is the team that you're going to assemble. Not all the equipment that I saw, incredible cell counters, tissue, all that kind of stuff. It's great stuff, but it's the people who make the organization run. And don't exclusively hire smart people, hire motivated people. You can make them smart. Now, a lot of the folks I met with today, they're really smart folks. But the more impressive thing is their passion for what they do and how they do it and who they want to hire the next time they have a chance. Most of you are familiar with Robert Greenleaf's idea of servant leadership. To lead is to serve first, and to lead second. I would call that servant leading, not to correct him or not. And the question is, are they born? Do they have a deep joy for your mission, vision, and values? Certainly in your organization, but in your team. And it's true in a family as well. What are your mission, vision, and values as a family? A lot of us assume that everyone knows what they are, that our kids know what our values are, but why not have a blunt conversation about it and talking about, what happened today and how did you lead today? Did you lead according to what you believed in the first place? I got a call. Somebody said, Doc, I need to talk. I said, fine, no problem whatsoever. Well, I faced a difficult situation and, I had to abandon my core values. And I said, then they weren't core values. If you abandon them in a crisis, then they weren't core values. They were what you said were core values, not what you truly believe in. I always ask this question: how does this person make other people feel? And just so you know, I hired over 5,000, closer to 10,000 emergency physicians. I always ask this question: what's the nurse's facial expression when they see your name on the schedule? Because they know I'm going to call, and they know the nurses are going to tell me what that was. And then finally, what's the worst thing I'm going to hear about you, and who am I going to hear it from? I swear I said, I didn't say I was a nice person. I said, this is how, because the answer to that last question tells you a lot about, are they self-reflective? Do they know how to make failure their fuel? Are they Eddie Haskell? And none of us want to work with Eddie Haskell, trust me. So talk briefly about burnout, and a lot of the ways we're working, particularly in healthcare, aren't working. And so we have doctors like the person on the left and nurses like the one on the right. The question is, how did that happen? It really happened, I think, because of a poor definition of burnout. My definition of burnout is very simple. First of all, definitions drive solutions. If I give you a definition and you can't do something actionable within a week that helps you solve that problem, then I've got to go back to the drawing board. So burnout is really your inability to feel your deep joy at work. If it was at home, you could say that's depression, and that's true, that's global. But work-related inability to experience your deep joy. It's that simple. So what does that mean? What are the obstacles in the way of you feeling and reconnecting to that deep joy? So the definition I used was a simple ratio that a fourth grader can help you with. Job stressors divided by adaptive capacity or resiliency. Now, most people are job stressors globally higher than they've ever been. I would say life stressors are higher than they've ever been, or certainly as high as they've ever been. And the negativity of anonymous electrons, don't get me started, but the ability to be snarky and mean and nasty just because you've got a weapon of mass distraction in your hand is a challenge. Trust me, we all know that. So that's divided by adaptive capacity or resiliency. Almost everyone uses the term resiliency. And I have an issue with it, and this is the issue. Again, I'm in healthcare, emergency medicine. If I say to a group of emergency physicians, 63% of whom have symptoms of burnout, or nurses, 58% of who have symptoms of burnout. The reason you're burned out is you're not resilient enough. Now, I didn't say it, but they heard me say, I'm the problem? I'm the problem? Are you kidding me? Look at the stressors that we're under. So I prefer the term adaptive capacity. And of course, there's a football story about that. You probably did too, but I started when I was a freshman. And back in the days when the Earth's crust was cooling, starting a freshman at Mike linebacker was unusual. The reason is you're calling the signals. We played a Tampa 2, but it wasn't called that at that time because Tony used that term afterwards. But I'm the guy in the middle calling the signals. And I could tell in the walkthrough through our very first game that the defensive coordinator was nervous about this because he suddenly stormed down onto the field right in the middle of the walkthrough and he goes, Mayor, my linebackers are agile, mobile, and hostile. What do you think of that? I said, oh, Coach, that's me. I'm agile, mobile, and hostile. I'm all those things. But I'm the Mike. I'm in the middle. I got to read and react. I'm calling the signals. I got to adapt all game long. And he paused for a second, and he said to the team, my linebackers are agile, mobile, hostile, and adaptile. True story. So that's what we have to be, I think. We got to be adaptile. And is that using weenie language to soften the blow? No, it's putting the emphasis where it needs to be. And so if I want to decrease burnout, what would I do? I would decrease job stressors, increase adaptive capacity. Again, I say fourth grader because a fourth grader understands that math. And yet a lot of us in business, healthcare, and other places don't. Now, some people would say, well, aren't the cardinal symptoms, as described by Christina Maslach, emotional exhaustion, cynicism, and loss of meaning at work? Yes, they are, but those are the symptoms. We don't treat symptoms. We treat root causes. We treat disease entities. And my point is, if I go to a group and I say, don't be so emotionally exhausted. Don't be so cynical. Regain your meaning at work. They're probably going to lynch me, and they probably should, because that's insulting, isn't it? I mean, I already knew that. The question is, how do you do that? And I think that's that ratio that we were talking about above. It really comes down to three fundamental insights. One, every member of the team is a leader. Lead yourself, lead your team. No matter what the team is, family, business, entity, shift in the emergency department. Number two, and this is, people don't get this, you'll get it instantly. Every team member is a performance athlete, no different than my 2,500 members of the NFL Players Union, involved in a cycle of performance, rest, and recovery. Performance, rest, and recovery. Ladies and gentlemen, we've neglected rest and recovery badly in our society. So invest in yourself and invest in your team. And number three, the work begins within. It has to begin within us, a personal journey towards accepting the fact that today I am a leader. The answers are not above me, they're within and among the team I operate with. The leader you're looking for is you. So start with yourself, but it turns towards teamwork because we work in teams. And we don't just play football in teams, but we live life in teams throughout, whatever those teams might be. So the paradox of teamwork is this. We can confidently assure our patients, our customers, whatever business you're in, that they're going to be taken care of by a team of experts, smart people. We live in a smart society. That's the original cast of the show ER. I was a script consultant for ER for 5 years. I can tell you that every single one of those characters was written in the script as very, very smart. All of them were also cast to be really good looking, except the guy in the middle of the back row, Anthony Edwards, who looks like me, with glasses and a little bit more hair. But the rest of them are good-looking folks. So, but that's a team of experts. That's different than an expert team. Different set of skills, different way of interacting. How many times will be on teams of really talented athletes, really talented people, maybe even really talented leaders that don't understand the skills of teams and teamwork, and that an expert team is not the same thing as having smart people in the first place. So that is the paradox, if you will. Sorry. I always get this question, what was leading at the Pentagon, concussion crisis, COVID, Ukraine, on and on and on like. And I would say Several lessons, the most important of which is the first one you see. The path to the head always goes through the heart. So if you're going to convince people that the certain reality exists and we need to figure out an alternate way of getting there, innovation at the speed of trust, you got to be able to touch their heart. And people ask me all the time, what's the best thing I can do to lead? Read to lead. Read to lead. Well, what should I read, Doc? And my answer, strangely enough, is not Harvard Business Review or Sloan Management Review. It's great literature, history, biography, the lives of great men, the lives of great women. What did they face? What were the problems? How did they make decisions? Which ones worked and which ones didn't? So I would say W.H. Auden, the opening lines of Musée des Beaux-Arts, fits about suffering. They were never wrong, the old masters. How well they understood its human position. So what I think we have to be in healthcare, and all of us have to be in our lives, is the chief storyteller. Telling the story to the patient of what their symptoms are, what their journey is through our system in terms of which tests are going to be run, and what that will tell us once those tests are done. If you say, well, I'm not in healthcare, you're in some form of business and you got some form of customer, and you also have to be able to tell the story to them of what it is that you're doing and why it is that the processes and systems are in place that you're being able to do. So becoming the chief storyteller is important. The great Danish writer Isak Dinesen, whose real name, as you may know, was Karen von Blixen. How sad that she had to write as a man in order to be published. If those of you who don't know it, Out of Africa, the Meryl Streep, Robert Redford story, that's the story of Baroness Karen von Blixen. But she said, all sorrows can be born if you can put them into a story or tell a story about them. It's absolutely true. So what's the story we need to tell to our team members, to our clients, to our patients, to our customers, to our family members in terms of the journey that we're going through, regardless of what that journey is? I always say one of the most important things we can do in healthcare is make the patient a part of the team. You say, I'm not in healthcare, but you've been a patient, haven't you? Did you feel that you were a part of the team? Most people don't. And most people in healthcare say, yeah, we make the patient a part of the team. But if I ask that nice lady in the middle there, then she's going to say, no, I don't. Well, how do you do that? You tell them. First thing I say to a patient in the emergency department, I'm Dr. Mayer. Sally and I, your nurse, are leading a team of great people. But you are the most important person on this team. And stop saying, what's the matter with you? And start saying, what matters to you? Not the same question. Not remotely the same question. In healthcare, we need to understand nothing about you without you. Nothing about you without you. So I would challenge, for those of you, and it's all of us who are involved in healthcare, including myself, to think about that in a different way. I will say, here's how many people are in healthcare? In the audience. Okay, got it. So lab, X-ray, and environmental services. Fill in the blank. Those are blank services. What's the word we use, the adjective we use in healthcare? Ancillary. Okay? All language has meaning, and all behavior has meaning. Both the linebacker and the theologian know that. All right? What does the language of ancillary mean? It derives from the Latin term ancilla, which means literally female slave. Are you serious? That's what we're calling people? Are you nuts? I don't mean you, the potentates, the suits as they say. But my point is, you call them what they are, essential services. We can't operate that hospital without them. And if we have time, I'll tell you a story about environmental services that's quite personal. But the point is, if they're not important members of the team, they shouldn't be on the team. And if they are important people, we should refer to them that, and we should thank them all day, every day. We're going to talk about saying thank you in a minute. And I told you this, we have a great team, but you're the most important part of the team. Quint Studer and I both independently came to this. The language to the patient should be, what's the most important thing that we, not I, we can do to make this an excellent healthcare experience? Whether it's an outpatient visit, a cardiology consult, whatever it might be, making sure that they know, we want to know what they believe the most important thing is critical. The answers are not in the C-suite, they're in the we-suite. The way in which we figure out an organization's ability to move forward is not by talking to the bosses and the potentates, it's talking to the people in the hallways. And that's why I say it's not the words on the walls that matter, it's the happenings in the halls. If I want to know the culture of an organization, you can send me 15 pages on mission, vision, and values, but it's a lot better off, as I did today, to talk to the people in the halls. And I can tell you this organization burns with passion because of the people who are there. And they understand this very important insight about culture. Because when you ask people about culture, what's the culture of your team, your organization, your hospital, your healthcare system, your football team, whatever it might be. What is the culture? Well, definitions drive solutions. I talked about this. We've made it too complicated. The great Mark Verstegen, who founded Team Exos and introduced me to this organization, and Ken, says it very well. Simple things done savagely well. We've made life far more complicated than it needs to be. My point is just repeat Aristotelian logic and knowledge, which is we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not a virtue, but a habit. So if you say honesty, integrity are the most important values that I have, that this family have, this organization has, I can look at what I did in that action that day and say, did that reflect honesty and integrity or not? And if not, why not? Because to me, culture comes from the actions, comes from leading. Leading from the front lines in terms of whatever it is that you're doing, those actions create a culture. So in my view, not a popular one, all of us each day, each organization, each team, each family create a culture. We leave a legacy behind every day we live. And the question becomes, what was the legacy? And is it consonant with the mission and vision and values that we thought were the case? And you know, the great thing about healthcare is we leave a legacy every day, and it's measured one what at a time? One patient at a time. So when I finish up at the end of the day, I'm going to see about 30 patients in the emergency department. I get ready to put the key in the ignition, and I think to myself, what did I leave in there? Because that's not easy for a lot of people. It's harder in some lines of work than it is, I think, in healthcare, as stressful as healthcare can be. Very important, limits begin where vision ends. You know, once your vision ends, then you're going to be constrained in ways that you don't want to be constrained. So what's the significance of this date? May 6, 1954. As far as we know, in the annals of history, something happened on May 6, 1954 that had never happened in the annals of mankind, ever, ever, ever. Any ideas what it might be? I usually get Telstar, I get Sputnik. Say again? Yeah, there we go. Good for you. Roger Bannister ran the 4-minute mile. Now, not only had Bannister and his colleagues been taught and told that it could not be done, it was physically impossible to do, but it would be fatal if a man tried to do that. Meaning, Lancet, New England Journal, and Journal of the American Medical Association all described in detail the ways you would die on the track if you tried to do that. And yet, Bannister did it. My question is, how long until 10 people had run a sub 4-minute mile? And the answer is 2 years and 3 months. Never 2 years and 3 months. 1 year and 2 weeks after May 6, 1954, 3 people ran a sub 4-minute mile in the same day, in the same race. So my point is, a shared vision, a shared innovation among a team of people committed to a deep joy can do almost anything. As Disney said, and also attributed to Henry Ford, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right. And yet, how did he do it? Anybody know what his profession was when he ran a sub 4-minute mile? He was a medical student, as it turns out, at Oxford University. So how did they do it? It was training. It was, they had pacers. It was all kinds of split times and all this stuff. No. VO2 max, You walk over to the building over there, they got a treadmill with a mask that you don't want on there because it's so tight, and that's how you measure VO2 max. So they didn't train on the track, they trained to maximize oxygen consumption to the maximum extent possible. And therefore, that's what I mean by limits begin where vision ends. And then all those people didn't suddenly get faster in a year or, and 2 weeks, or 2 years and 3 weeks. They got faster because they saw the vision, because he had the vision. Chris Brathwaite and Chris Chataway, his fellow runners, were also medical students at Oxford. So don't let limits limit you, and share your vision more widely. So a couple quick football things. Super Bowl 54, Hard Rock Stadium, fourth quarter, 7 minutes and 13 seconds remaining. You may remember this was the Chiefs versus the 49ers, okay? Chiefs are trailing 20-10, and as you're going to hear in just a second, it was Patrick Mahomes was having a rough enough day that Joe Buck says almost as soon as the tape starts to play in a minute, the Chiefs need some Mahomes magic. Now, that wasn't a criticism of Patrick. It's because there were 11 guys on the other side of the ball, as you'll see in a minute, in white jerseys, that were making his day very bad. He was under pressure constantly. And Steve Spagnuolo, who at the time was the Chiefs defensive coordinator, was scheming in brilliant ways. He's now actually the Chiefs defensive coordinator. And let me see if I can show you what this looks like. So anyway, Patrick comes over to the sideline during a break and a timeout. There was actually reviewing a play, and he said literally to Big Red, Andy Reid, and to Eric Bieniemy, who at the time was the offensive coordinator, do we have time to run WASP? You have 7 minutes and 13 seconds. I mean, that seems like that'd be enough time to run a play, surely. That's not what he's talking about. That's not football lingo. He's not talking about God time. He's talking about football time. Because this particular play, which is, it went to the huddle, and this was the call. Gun, tray right, 2-3, jet chip wasp, Y funnel. Now, you probably understand what that means. He's in a shotgun formation. Patrick, I don't know if I can do this very well. There's Patrick in a shotgun formation here. Tray right means Travis Kelce, the tight end, is right, but that forces trips left. So when they say tray right, it means tight end right, wide receivers to the left, and that's the wasp. But that's Tyreek Hill in the slot formation over there. 2-3 jet chip is the line call, meaning chip to the outside because the pressure was coming from the outside. So it's a call to the line and the running back who stayed in. Y funnel means Kelce is going to go run it down and out because they're in cover 3. They look like cover 2 here, but they drop back into cover 3, and it's intended to pull the safety on that side off to the side. So that's the play. And I would just say, not only did Patrick know what everybody was doing on that play, I guarantee you in the National Football League, every player on that squad knows what every other player's job is to do on that particular play. So it's a 7-step drop. The ball, he was 14 yards deep by the time he got back there. Watch this player on the defensive side right there, the X, that's a defensive tackle, and he's going to run a stunt to the outside. It's DeForest Buckner. And this is what it looked like.
Need some Mahomes magic. Launches down the middle, Hill, open, caught. And they get it, Kansas City, the big play.
So that ball traveled 57.1 yards in the air because we graphed it out in terms of what happened. I can tell you my wife and I were there at the game. Even though they were down at that time 20-10, as soon as that play was completed, we got up and left. And the people around us said, Doc, what, are you crazy? And I said, look, the game's over. Trust me, it's over. And it was, as you saw. What's my point? Well, I love geeking out on football. A couple of you do as well. But who called that play? Big Red? Eric Bieniemy? Mahomes. So my question to you, in your teams, in your organizations, in your family, can anyone call the play? If not, why not? Shouldn't it be the responsibility, if it's true that we're all leaders, if it's true that the answer to the leader you're looking for is you, if the answers are within and among us instead of above us, then any of us should be able to call the play? And I think the answer is yes. But not every organization feels that way. As a matter of fact, most organizations don't feel that way. Smart people are not smart teams. I'm going to offend everybody before I'm done here between, what your favorite team is and all that. This is widely known as the 26-3 Super Bowl, when the Falcons played who are those guys? Oh, yeah, that's who's that guy? Okay. So the point was, they were down, the Patriots are down badly at halftime. And people were, I was there, my wife and I were there. People were getting up and leaving literally leaving the building at halftime. That's how bad the situation was. And, I say, well, what do you think happened? Oh, Belichick, great mastermind of halftime adjustments. Nope, not what happened. Tommy, TB12, also best quarterback at halftime adjustments, at least until Mahomes came along, and on and on. Nope. What happened at halftime was a 67-year-old man in the locker room pulled the offensive line aside. His name is Dom Scarnecchia, Dante Scarnecchia. He's the offensive line coach, 67 years old, of the Patriots. And he told his guys, how have I taught you to block? And the answer is thumbs up, fingers out. Do that for me, please. Thumbs up, fingers out. Where's your elbows? Where do your elbows have to be? Inside. You've been blocking thumbs down, fingers in. Do that for me. What did you just do? You created not one, but two levers. And so that's why Tommy was getting killed in the first half, because they couldn't get any protection. Until Mahomes, he was the fastest release in the history of NFL quarterbacks in terms of getting the ball out quickly. And yet, the simple adjustment of going back to the fundamentals, and if you look at the slide on the right, where's his thumbs? The offensive lineman's thumbs. They're inside. That edge rusher is one of the better edge rushers, or at the time was one of the better edge rushers in the league. Can't get by because of the mechanics. And so my point is, smart people don't mean smart teams. And if you're going to coach details. Don't call ethereal things. Be nice, be kind, be gentle. It's all good, but how is that going to help us, our kids, our families, instead of more detail in terms of how we do it? So coaching details and the double entendre, not creating levers for people to move around, is important. You can always say, this is the locker room of the Denver Broncos. You can easily judge the character of a man by how he treats those who can do nothing for him. That's Goethe, Wolfgang Goethe. And I said Greek, Steve Antonopoulos, the trainer, said, Greek, what's up with that? He said, Coach Kubes, Gary Kubiak was the coach at the time. His dad always told him that, and so he wanted it up so that you cannot get out of that locker room without seeing that sign. And you might be able to see faintly that people, when they go out, they hit that sign every time. Now, I would say, number one, there's no one who can do nothing for you. There's no one who can do nothing for you. But the idea, I think, is important. And I would say thank you 50 times a day. If you say thank you 50 times a day, it's infectious. More infectious than measles, the coronavirus, or anything else. People catch it, and they're not able to do anything but get rid of it by giving it to other people, and it goes a long way, a long way. I realize I'm running over a little bit. Let me tell you one quick story. It has to do with how I became a physician. I told you I was a linebacker. Third of the way through the freshman season, coach pulls me aside. He says, hey, you got to choose a major. I said, major what? You didn't say anything about a major when you recruited me. No, major field of study. So I thought, it's theology. It's great. You don't have to write papers. You get to write papers. You don't have to take tests. You get to sit under trees, and why is there air, and things like that. I'm on a scholarship to play football anyway. How bad could this be? And halfway through school, started my junior year, two professors pulled me aside and they said, Tom, has it ever occurred to you that you might have more influence in life if you became a doctor instead of a theologian? And I said, look, I don't think about anything, as you guys have probably figured out by now. But I liked these guys, and so I started taking pre-med courses. So in my fall of my junior year, not only am I playing football, but I'm taking pre-med courses that the freshmen are taking. So I go in, Chemistry 101. That was the first one, and taught by Keith White, the chairman of the Department of Chemistry. And we go in, first test. Some of you are old enough to remember mimeographed, the purple, and it had the smell to it and all that kind of stuff. And this was a very thick test. It was 100 questions. But there was something odd because it was thicker at the back than it was at the front. Fine. Flip the thing over, first question. A mole is Avogadro's number of particles, or 5 answers. Who's Avogadro? He's got a number? What do you mean, like a phone number? I mean, what are we talking about here? No clue. A mole, that's a critter, isn't it? I think I saw one out in the lawn out there. And so I thought, well, this has been fun. I mean, are we still in drop ad? I think I can get rid of this course. Back to theology. So, true story. I started just going A, B, C, D, E, E, D, C, B, A, and I just went through the test like that. You'd call it a sluggo route. That looked like a sluggo route, And, first of all, was I the first one done? When you don't read the questions, it does not take you long to take the test. Trust me. So I get to the back, and there's a blue envelope. That's why it was heavy in the back. And inside the envelope is a piece of paper. And the envelope, typed on it, said, bonus question, if you get this right, you get an A in this test, no matter what you did on the first 100. I thought, can't be Avogadro again. Let's give it a shot. So I open this up, and it says, verbatim, what's the name of the man who cleans this room every night so you can have a nice place to learn? True story. I walked up to Dr. White, and I said, Dr. White, the bonus question. And he smiled, and he said, yes. I said, do you want his first name or his last name? He said, Tom, if you can give me his first name and his last name, I'll not only give you an A on this test, I'll give you an A in this course. If you show up, do all your chemistry lab work, and do the best you can. Not the best anyone can, but the best you can. And I said, why not take a flyer here? I said, well, what if I can give you the names and ages of his children and his wife's name? He stood up, took his glasses off. You know how some people point with their glasses. He said, Tom, if you can do that, I don't want to give you an A in this course. I'll give you an A in every chemistry course that you take, as long as you show up and as long as you do your work. I was as good as his word, as my word, and he was as good as his. And so the question, how did I become a doctor? Because of a janitor at the college I went to. True story. That's true story. Gospel true story. And thank you. That was a digression and took longer than it should have. But my point is, the people always matter. They always, and how did I know him? And the reason is I had football practice. I had to write my theology essays. I didn't even get to the chemistry lab until about midnight when he was coming on work from, certainly his second job, but in some cases his third job. And so I remember he would always look at me and he'd say, he's got fire in the belly. I said, no, sir, I just don't plan very well. So the people around us matter, as they always do. Well, when's a good time to do this? How about now? How about now? So don't think, act, and innovate. Not just think, but act and innovate. So I'll close with this story. Ken knows this, and all of his scientists know it as well. The movie Oppenheimer, if you happen to see that, was very good on multiple different levels. But it captured the sense that in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, the cutting edge of science was physics, theoretical and experimental physics. The way biotechnology is, the way that all this a huge organization is now. But in those days, it was physics. So in the summer of 1958, a convention was held at Columbia University in the summer, and all of the greatest physicists of the world were there except two, Einstein, who by that time never left the Institute for Advanced Studies at Princeton, and Oppenheimer, who was pinned down, if you saw the movie, at the Senate testimony. The guy on the left, Wolfgang Bohr, got up and gave a unified field theory. Unified field theory, taking Newtonian mechanics, quantum mechanics, special theory of relativity, which came first in 1905, general theory of relativity, 1915, Heisenberg's uncertainty principles, Planck's constant, and all the things that went with that, tying it into one single unified field theory. Einstein tried to do this his whole life and could not pull it off. Bohr gets up and makes that paper presentation. The guy on the right, Niels Bohr, beautifully played by the great Kenneth Branagh in the movie, if you saw the movie, got up at the podium and looks down at Bohr and says, "We all agree that your theory is crazy. The question which divides us, is it crazy enough?" And so my closing question to you, are you crazy enough? Are you crazy enough to constantly seek your deep joy, to constantly enact that, to wake up every day and say, I am a leader. How will I lead? Will I be constant with mission, vision, and values? Will I understand that limits begin where vision ends? And encourage my teammates, my workmates, and more importantly, our kids in many respects, to be able to be crazy. Because my advice to you is, if you're not crazy, go get crazy. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. It's very kind. Thank you. Thank you. I think we may have questions. First of all, I apologize. I ran long, but I got excited. What do they do? Raise their hand?
Sir, could you say a couple comments what it was like on 9/11 at the Pentagon?
Yes. What was it like at 9/11 on the Pentagon, in case anybody didn't hear that? It was surreal. It was, there's something fundamentally wrong with people. Most people, when they hear a loud noise and there's a bang and there's fire and there's explosion, run away. I mean, that's human nature. That's the way it is. You could say it's evolutionary or whatever it might be. Those of us in emergency medicine and disaster medicine, trauma care, are just wired wrong, because we run right towards the sounds of battle and the issues that go there. It was my job as command physician. You have an orange vest on, fluorescent vest, so it's not like you can hide or cover it up somehow. Everyone knows who you are. And it's set up under incident command. I can see that you're a veteran and you've got incident command in whatever branch of the forces, maybe Air Force, if I'm seeing the hat right. If it's not, I apologize for that. But the people preparing ahead of time to know what to do. And yet it is, I looked at it and I thought, that can't be real. That can't be the Pentagon. But sure enough, and 2 days later, we discovered the landing gear itself, the wheel assembly from the aircraft and one of the engines, which were critical for the evidence recovery, FBI evidence recovery team. But it was, I wouldn't say it was easy, but it was comforting to know that the training pays off. It always pays off. And to the extent that it didn't pay off, it was because we didn't follow the training. Now, I will say, since you asked, and I hope this doesn't offend anybody, but I get asked that question a lot, and I would tell you that one of the lessons is, you ready for it? Stop sucking up in life, start sucking down. Now, again, I don't mean any offense by that, but what I will tell you is, behind the Jersey barriers that were erected instantly after the thing, there were 31 generals, 2-star and above, all great people, all passionate. Those were their people in that building. And they were there to help if they could. What I mean by sucking up is I could have turned my back to the Pentagon and spent my time talking to the generals, establishing relationships and all that stuff. I didn't do that. I sucked down to the structural engineers, to the paramedics, to the firefighters, to the FBI evidence recovery team, because my job, I had one job: keep them safe. Don't let anybody go in that building unless it's safe to go in, and don't let them go into any areas unless it's safe to go in. And that's what I mean by the answers were among us, not above us and the generals behind us. So again, if I give offense with the way I said it, I'm not intending to. I'm simply saying, I think that's true whether you're in a disaster situation, a family, a business. You know, the people doing the work are the people who know how to do the work. If you want to fix systems and processes and make things better, talk to the people who do the work, not to the C-suite. Does that make sense?
On that note, let's thank our speaker.
Thanks.